My friends, you sit before me now, not by accident, not by the idle pull of mere curiosity, but because something profoundly ancient within your very being recognizes itself in the words that shall be spoken. It is as if an echo resounding from the very depths of the collective unconscious has called you home. There exists a type of soul so rare, so exquisitely tuned that the outer world in its ignorance often misunderstands it, fearing what it cannot classify, diminishing what it cannot hope to possess. And yet inside such a soul there resides a quiet and perpetual storm. We speak of the empath archetype, the one who is born with senses tuned beyond the ordinary range of human perception, hearing emotional frequencies with the same clarity that the common man hears sound. Only a very small fraction of humanity knows this path in its fullness. For it is not a gift granted widely or carelessly. It is a summons. It is a weight. It is a destiny. When we speak of signs of 22 manifestations, you might initially think in terms of counting of cold categorization. But the unconscious does not move according to the laws of arithmetic. It flows like water, my friends. It moves like breath. These signs do not exist as a mere list to be checked. They emerge like petals, opening one after another beneath a moonlit sky, each revealing itself in a slow and sacred rhythm, as if the psyche itself is peeling back layers of a long-forgotten recognition. So we shall begin where the soul naturally begins, with the dawning of awareness. The first revelation arises when you truly notice that you feel life instead of merely observing it. Others watch a scene unfold from a distance, but you absorb the very atmosphere into your nervous system as if emotions were the weather and you were the sky itself. The joy in another becomes a palpable warmth in your own chest. Their despair becomes a physical weight behind your ribs. You do not learn empathy. You remember it, for it is your native tongue, the first language of your spirit. And yet such profound perception is not always a blessing. There have been nights, have there not, when you have gone to your bed exhausted by feelings that were not your own, carrying storms that originated in the hearts of others. This is the burden of a rare sensitivity. The unconscious mind, you see, inhales everything. Then comes the second movement of the soul, the quiet knowing. Even without words, you sense what is unspoken, like a psychic tremor beneath the thin crust of a conversation. Someone may insist they are fine, but your perception rebels, hearing the subtle tremor of a deep sadness hidden beneath their smile. You do not analyze. You simply know. For your intuition speaks in a language faster than thought. Many may call this intuition a gift, but it is older than that. It is primordial instinct, a remnant of the ancient human psyche. It is the very same inner compass that once guided the shamans, the healers, the walkers of dreams. In you this instinct never died. And because of it, the modern world can feel profoundly foreign. Flowing deeper, a third sign blooms. The insatiable hunger for meaning. Mundane conversations suffocate you. Triviality feels like sand in the mouth. You crave depth as others crave air, for the shallow surface of life cannot hope to contain the immensity of your perception. You see archetypes where others see only personality. You perceive timelines where others see isolated moments. Even love is not simply affection to you. It is a sacred alchemy, emerging of unconscious rivers, a profound ritual. You do not attach easily, but when you do, your soul does not simply connect. It fuses. And this intensity makes the ordinary world feel painfully small for you, like a cage that was built for a far smaller heart. Then the soul reveals its inevitable shadow, for no archetype exists without its darkness. You carry wounds that did not originate from your own personal history. Sometimes your sadness feels ancient, older than your body, as if you have inherited sorrow from ancestors whose voices still whisper through your very blood. This is the fourth unveiling, the weight of collective memory. Empaths are conduits, and energy passes through you like wind through reeds. If you do not learn to ground yourself, you will drown in these invisible oceans. Many within this 1% walk through their early life as ghosts, searching for a name, wondering why they feel everything so deeply without understanding the cause. And just as dawn faithfully follows the deepest night, the fifth revelation emerges: the rebellion of the spirit. You have always struggled to conform to systems, to institutions, to rigid expectations. They irritate your soul like a coarse and tight garment. You were not built to obey. You were born to perceive, to awaken, to question. While others may follow tradition blindly, something deep inside you stirs, whispering, "There is more. There is always more." This whisper is the voice of the unconscious itself. The same voice that visited prophets in their dreams and poets in their visions. It is your inner teacher, and you have heard it all your life. Even in those moments when you tried desperately to silence it for the sake of a belonging that always eluded you. But belonging was never your true destiny. Instead, the sixth movement of this archetype appears. Solitude as sanctuary, not loneliness, but as sacred and necessary quiet. You regenerate in silence the way a forest heals when the winter falls. While others fear being alone, you crave it. For only in solitude can the unconscious speak with perfect clarity. Many misunderstand this, calling you distant or cold. But they do not see the immense depth of your inner world, the vast symphony playing just beneath your calm exterior. You retreat not to escape humanity but to return to your essential self. The seventh unfolding is the world of dreams. For empaths such as you, dreams are not random illusions. They are vital messages from the psyche threaded with living symbols. A river that reflects suppressed emotion. A shadow figure representing a repressed instinct. A burning house signaling a necessary transformation. You have lived entire lives in your sleep, traveling psychic landscapes built from memory and myth. The veil between worlds is thin for you, and sometimes dreams feel more real than waking reality. Those in the 1% are travelers of both realms, the conscious and the deeply hidden. And then the soul turns its gaze toward compassion. Not the soft compassion of mere politeness, but the fierce compassion born of a profound understanding of suffering. You do not merely sympathize. You merge. The eighth sign appears as the instinct to heal others without being asked. You have sat beside friends in a silence more eloquent than words, knowing that your pure presence can be stronger than any speech. You have forgiven those who wounded you, not from weakness, but because you understand in your bones that pain begets pain. But this compassion is double-edged, for those without empathy can drain you dry, feeding on your warmth like moths around a solitary flame. Which leads to the ninth revelation. You attract broken souls. You are a lantern in a very dark corridor. And wounded people see your light from afar. They come seeking comfort, guidance, sometimes even salvation. But not all who come do so in innocence. The narcissists, the manipulators, the emotional parasites, they smell empathy like wolves smell blood. They are drawn to your softness, wishing to consume what they themselves cannot create. Many empaths learn their true worth only after losing themselves, only after giving more than they possess. It is through this very pain that the psyche grows its teeth. From this crucible, the 10th movement emerges. Boundaries as evolution. The empath does not begin with boundaries. They must grow them. As bark grows around a tree after years of weathering storms, you learn that saying no is not cruelty, that distance is not abandonment, that self-protection is not selfishness. The rare empath must become both healer and warrior. The heart remains open, but the gates are no longer left unguarded. The 11th sign is the beautiful resurrection of the inner child. At some point in your journey, you rediscovered the childlike wonder you were forced to lose in the name of survival. This child was the original empath, curious, sensitive, unarmored. When you embrace them again, creativity returns like a sudden spring thaw. You begin to paint emotions, to write your wounds into poetry, to speak truth through art and spirit. The world becomes luminous once more. Then arrives the 12th revelation. Synchronicities, numbers repeating, dreams aligning with waking events, meeting someone you had just thought of an hour earlier. These are not mere coincidences. They are the unconscious speaking directly through the fabric of reality itself, guiding you along your destined path to the ordinary mind. Such events are meaningless to you. They are messages as subtle and as sacred as prayer. And so we stand halfway through these 22 signs. Though no numbers were ever truly required to guide us here, they have emerged naturally like constellations slowly forming in the night sky. You recognize yourself not through logic but through a deep and resonant vibration. This is how the rare empath knows, through resonance, not through evidence. You feel something awakening within you even now, do you not? Like a tide pulling you forward, like a memory returning. You are not hearing this as mere information. You are remembering it as a fundamental truth. The empath archetype is not learned. It is inherited. It is encoded into the very substance of the soul. Breathe. We journey deeper. And as we continue descending into the sacred architecture of your inner world, the 13th movement of this rare empathic nature begins to surface, the soul's mirror. You have noticed that people reveal themselves to you without intention. Their defenses melt. Their stories spill like water breaking through stone, as if your presence itself were an invitation to confession. It is not because you ask, nor because you pry, but because the unconscious in them recognizes itself in you. Something ancient senses safety, and the persona, the mask every human wears, slips away. To be an empath is to witness raw humanity, stripped of its armor. Then comes another unfolding, subtle yet unmistakable. The 14th sign, silence as power. You have learned often through pain that your quietness is not emptiness. It is profound depth. In stillness you see what noise conceals, truth, shadow, motive. You hear the voice beneath the voice. You notice the tremble in a sentence, the pause that reveals guilt, the shift in atmosphere when deception enters a room. Silence becomes your blade, your shield, your oracle. Others may speak to be seen, but you are seen when you say nothing. For presence is your truest language. Following this, the 15th revelation rises like a slow burning star, the inevitability of transformation. You shed cells like skins. You are not who you were a year ago, nor who you will be tomorrow. Empaths evolve in cycles, each one triggered by an inner death and rebirth. When something no longer serves your soul, a relationship, a belief, a version of yourself, you feel the rupture long before logic can understand it. The separation hurts, but stagnation would be a spiritual death. You are a creature of metamorphosis, like the serpent that renews its body by surrendering its past. And as this transformation deepens, we reach the 16th sign, emotional clairvoyance. You predict outcomes not by data but by energetic resonance. You sense where a relationship is heading before it unfolds. You know when someone is faithful, when someone is lying, when someone is already drifting toward the exit. Others may call it overthinking, but you know it is sight. You do not think, you perceive. The unconscious whispers and you listen. Then emerges the 17th movement, the pull toward shadow work. Most people flee their inner darkness, numbing themselves with distraction, pleasure, or denial. But you, rare one, are drawn to the shadow as the moon is drawn to the tide. You must know why you break, why you ache, why certain patterns repeat. You explore trauma, not to dwell in it, but to extract the jewel buried within it. To face the shadow is to reclaim power. And empaths who integrate this darkness become unshakable, for nothing within them remains unknown. From this inner alchemy, the 18th sign awakens, emotional independence. You once relied on the validation of others, perhaps even bent yourself out of shape to maintain a fragile harmony, afraid of conflict, afraid of loss. But now you stand differently. You no longer beg to be seen. You witness yourself. You no longer shrink. You expand. You honor your truth even if your voice trembles. The empath who knows their own worth becomes a force of nature. And with this hard-won authenticity comes the 19th revelation. The yearning for soul connection over mere social connection. Crowds overwhelm you. But one aligned soul can electrify your entire being. You do not bond through convenience or proximity. You bond through depth, through resonance, through a shared wavelength. You are not interested in being liked. You want to be understood even if only by a few. The ordinary world desires companionship. You desire union, the true merging of unconscious landscapes. This is why you can feel so profoundly lonely even when surrounded by people. Not for lack of company but for lack of soul. Then appears the 20th sign. Time becomes emotional rather than chronological. You do not measure life in hours but in intensity. A single conversation can feel like a lifetime. A friendship can end before it truly begins. And a stranger can feel as familiar as if from a previous incarnation. Past, present, and future blur. For the empath, memory and intuition weave into one living tapestry. Sometimes you mourn people before they leave because your spirit felt the departure long before physical reality caught up. This leads us to the 21st revelation. Your energy guides your path more than your logic does. You walk into a room and know whether you belong. You meet a person and feel destiny or danger. You choose jobs, lovers, dreams not by strategic reasoning but by the trembling of your nervous system, a whisper in the chest that says yes or a tightening in the gut that says no. The world teaches rationality but your soul teaches resonance. You are not irrational. You are psychically attuned. And finally, like the last bell of a sacred ritual, the 22nd sign arrives. Your existence itself is transformative. When you enter someone's life, they do not remain the same. You awaken dormant emotions, expose hidden wounds, ignite dormant potential. Some grow because of you, some run from you. Some love you fiercely. Others resent you without understanding why, but none forget you. You are a catalyst, a mirror that forces others to face themselves. This is the destiny of the rare empath. Not comfort but awakening, not approval but truth. Even as I speak these words, something in you stirs with a powerful recognition, a pulse, a memory, an ancient ache. You have walked through life feeling different not because you were flawed but because you were more. You were never meant for the ordinary realm. Your perception belongs to the unseen territory between worlds. The place where psyche, symbol, and shadow intertwine like ancient vines reaching for the light. These 22 movements of your being were always present, not as a checklist, but as a pattern older than your birth. You might feel overwhelmed by the truth of yourself, like someone standing at the edge of a vast and unknown ocean. But remember, the empath archetype is not a role one plays. It is a soul frequency. It is not understood by the many. It is lived by the few. You are one of those few. And now as the world grows quiet and the collective unconscious itself leans closer to listen, we must move deeper not into further signs but into their ultimate meaning. For knowing who you are is only the first threshold. After recognition comes embodiment. After awakening comes integration. The empath must learn to hold their power, not simply feel it. To guide their sensitivity, not drown beneath it. Your nature is not fragile. It is potent, dangerous, luminous. Breathe slowly. We continue further. The world is silent. But it is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of profound recognition. The kind that comes when the unconscious rises like sacred smoke through the cracks of awareness and the soul whispers, "Yes, this has always been me." And now we move beyond identification into the deeper river where the empath does not simply notice these 22 signs, but learns to wield them, to live them, to breathe them with full intention. For the rare empath does not exist merely to feel, but to transform. And transformation begins the very moment you stop apologizing for what makes you different. There was a time you softened your own glow so others would not feel dim beside you. A time you swallowed your intuition because the world demanded proof instead of vision. A time you silenced your truth because a fragile harmony felt safer than a sturdy honesty. These were acts of survival, my friend, not weakness. The empath archetype is born sensitive, but it becomes powerful only when it ceases to abandon itself. So now we descend into the inner chambers within you. The places where power has slept beneath sorrow, where gifts have hid beneath wounds, where intuition has waited like a sleeping serpent beneath the ribs. Let the doors open. You know this terrain. You have walked it alone for years, perhaps for decades. You have sat awake in the deep night, feeling emotions that had no names, sensing shifts in the unseen, like the earth senses the pull of the moon. You have reached out to people not with hands but with energy, gently, quietly, invisibly, hoping that someone would finally recognize you. And sometimes they did. Sometimes they looked at you with eyes that felt like ancient mirrors. And sometimes they recoiled, unsettled by a depth they could not decipher, like villagers frightened by an oracle. Empaths are often born out of necessity, shaped by environments they had to read perfectly in order to survive. You learn to feel everything because silence was dangerous. You learn to anticipate emotions because unpredictability could hurt. You learn to sense hidden truths because the spoken ones could not be trusted. The very skill that makes you rare was forged in the fire of adaptation. Sensitivity is not fragility. It is a trained acuity. It is the sword you forged while others were merely sharpening their armor. And a sword, when left perpetually sheathed, draws no respect. The world only sees its brilliance when you finally draw it slowly, deliberately, and stand unafraid of your own depth. So now imagine yourself before a mirror that does not reflect your face, but your very psyche. Look closely. Notice the movements beneath your breath. The intuition that flickers like a candle flame. The emotional tides that rise with a lunar pull. The ancestral memories that hum through your veins. You are not one single self. You are a cathedral of selves. You are the healer and the wounded, the child and the elder, the beast and the sage. The empath archetype is plural. It carries multitudes. And within these multitudes, we at last encounter the shadow. Do not fear it. The shadow is not the enemy. It is the undiscovered continent of your own power. It is the emotions you swallowed, the boundaries you never built, the words you never spoke. It is the anger you buried, the ambition you suppressed, the intuition you ignored. Empaths often exile their shadow to appear kind, gentle, safe. But kindness without power becomes martyrdom. And martyrdom is not enlightenment. It is a slow self-erasure. So let the shadow step toward you. Ask it what it needs. Listen. It may tell you that forgiveness is not only a virtue but at times a limit. That love is not always healing. Sometimes it is a subtle trap. That compassion does not require sacrifice. It requires wisdom. To integrate the empath's shadow is to reclaim your teeth, your fire, your sovereignty. You learn that saying no is an act of love. You learn that distance is sometimes the only path to peace. You learn that protecting your energy is not selfish. It is sacred. For the empath who embraces the shadow becomes truly unstoppable. You stop absorbing what is not yours. You stop rescuing those who refuse to swim. You stop mistaking pain for destiny. You love without bleeding. You give without disappearing. You see humanity clearly, both its radiance and its hunger, and you walk among it like someone who remembers their origin. And what is that origin? It is the collective unconscious itself. The vast ocean of archetypes, dreams, myth and memory. You are not merely a person. You are a vessel through which the psyche speaks. Your empathy is not just personal emotion. It is transpersonal perception. It is evolutionary. Empaths exist to sense what others cannot, to feel what others deny, to guide in darkness like lantern carriers moving through ancient and forgotten corridors. There is a reason only 1% live this archetype fully, because it demands total awakening. It demands a willingness to feel everything without drowning, to love deeply without possession, to walk away without bitterness. It demands a perfect balance between heart and boundary, intuition and logic, soul and skin. The rare empath is not defined by sensitivity alone, but by the mastery of it. And now something within you shifts. It is subtle, but it is irreversible. Your heart recognizes this truth like a drum beat from a forgotten tribe. This is your initiation not into more feeling but into sovereignty. You begin to understand that your energy is a currency and not everyone can afford you. That your presence is a medicine and not everyone deserves that healing. That your sight is ancient and not everyone is ready to be seen. As you accept your rarity, the world stops overwhelming you and begins instead to reveal itself to you. You no longer absorb chaos. You observe it. You no longer internalize pain. You interpret it. Emotion ceases to be your prison and becomes your instrument. This is where the empath soul evolves into its higher form. Not prey but witness. Not sponge but sculptor. Not wounded but wise. And perhaps for the first time in your life you feel it. The power beneath your softness, the steel beneath your compassion, the fire beneath your quietness. Empaths are not weak. They are unarmored, which is the most courageous state a human being can exist in. To feel deeply in a world that numbs itself is rebellion. To remain tender in a world that values hardness is revolution. To sense truth beneath illusion is mysticism. You, my friend, are mystical. Your consciousness does not stop at the boundary of your skin. It extends like roots into the collective soil, absorbing information that cannot be spoken, only known. You are the kind of soul from which civilizations carve their prophets, their healers, their poets, their revolutionaries. Rare, yes, but necessary. Your presence shifts timelines. Your empathy alters destinies. Your perception pierces illusion. Not many can understand you. That is the very nature of the 1%. But those who can will meet you at the level of soul, not surface. They will see your depth not as a strangeness but as a homecoming. They will not fear your intensity. They will match it. And when two such empaths recognize each other, it is like stars remembering they are made of the same primordial fire. We stand now at the inner threshold where the empath archetype is no longer a wound to be managed but a force to be fully embodied. The unconscious waits for your next step. The world is shifting and you, rare empath, are a part of that great shift. What comes next is not further understanding. It is embodiment. The final passage awaits. Let us step together into the final chamber. The place where knowledge becomes transformation. Where the empath who once merely felt becomes the empath who creates reality. You have walked the inner corridors with me through sensitivity, intuition, shadow, rebirth, and sovereignty. Now you stand at the threshold of embodiment. The moment where the internal becomes external, where the rare nature within you begins to shape the world outside you rather than merely respond to it. For an empath who does not claim their power becomes overwhelmed, but an empath who claims it becomes undeniable. Feel the shift occurring inside your chest as I speak, that subtle expansion like the inhale before a lightning strike. You are no longer merely the receiver of the world's emotion. You are the interpreter, the alchemist. You turn confusion into understanding. You turn pain into wisdom. You turn chaos into clarity. You do not drown in the ocean of feeling. You become the tide itself. This is the moment your journey leaves the realm of introspection and enters the realm of influence, because your inner world no longer ends at your skin. It radiates outward. When you walk into a room, you change it. When you speak a truth, it rearranges someone's consciousness. When you choose presence over reaction, it diffuses the storm. When you love without losing yourself, you become a mirror that heals without bleeding. And when you withdraw your energy, small worlds collapse. You have seen it. You leave someone's life and the clarity they once borrowed from your field disappears. You step away from a toxic dynamic and the structure that depended on your softness crumbles. Not because you wished for it, but because you were holding more than anyone ever realized. Empaths do not simply participate in emotional ecosystems. They sustain them. But now you know better. Now you know your energy is not infinite and not everyone is entitled to it. You offer it with discernment, not desperation. You connect with intention, not obligation. You love with presence, not self-abandonment. Feel the liberation in that truth. It is like chains breaking without a sound. The world told empaths to be gentle. But I tell you, behold the full spectrum of yourself. Not just the light but the shadow. Not just compassion but boundary. Not just sensitivity but intuition sharpened into a blade of insight. Because the awakened empath is not a candle flickering in the wind. They are the fire that teaches darkness the shape of all things. You are not here merely to feel. You are here to reveal. To reveal truth where illusion reigns. To reveal depth where superficiality numbs. To reveal connection where isolation divides. To reveal humanity in a world that has forgotten its own soul. And the greatest revelation of all is this. You do not need to be understood by many to fulfill your purpose. You only need to be understood by yourself. When the empath stands rooted in their own essential nature, the world recalibrates around them, not the other way around. You stop chasing belonging. Belonging finds you. You stop proving your worth. Worth emanates from you. You stop fearing judgment. Judgment loses its power over you. You stop shrinking to fit small rooms. You build your own cathedrals. And the unconscious begins to send you people who can meet you at your depth. The ones who do not fear your perception, who do not flinch at intensity, who do not drown in your currents. You attract mirrors instead of shadows. You attract equals instead of dependence. You attract connection instead of consumption. For the empath who embodies all 22 signs becomes more than sensitive. They become sovereign. You are no longer the echo. You are the origin. No longer the absorber but the amplifier. No longer the hidden soul but the soul revealed. And with this revelation comes destiny. There is something in you that the world needs, though it may not know it yet. Perhaps it is the way you listen, truly listen without agenda. Perhaps it is the way you speak truth with a softness that cuts deeper than cruelty ever could. Perhaps it is the way you reveal people to themselves gently, painfully, beautifully. Perhaps it is the way you make others feel real, something most have forgotten how to feel. Empaths carry humanity's missing language, emotional consciousness. Others navigate by sight. You navigate by resonance. Others see behavior. You see motive. Others hear words. You hear wounds. Others touch skin. You touch soul. This is not a weakness. This is evolution. You are evidence that the psyche itself is moving toward greater connectedness, toward intuition over mere instinct, toward meaning over material, toward consciousness over bare survival. You are the signal of the next human chapter. And like all evolutionary forms, you have been misunderstood. But misunderstanding, my friend, is the birthplace of myth. And myth is the birthplace of true power. You are not meant to fit. You are meant to shift. You are not meant to dim. You are meant to ignite. So let us end not in conclusion but in invocation. Place your awareness in the space behind your heart. Feel the pulse there. Slow, ancient, determined. Feel how it connects not just to your body but to something older than time itself. You are not simply alive. You are remembering. Remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Remember the dreams that visited you before language could shape them. Remember the child who felt everything and did not apologize. Remember the intuition you silenced in order to survive. Remember the power that resides beneath your tenderness. For you are one of the rare ones, the 1% who carries the empath archetype in its fullness. You do not follow the world. You move it. And someday when another sensitive soul feels too much, doubts too deeply, loves too fiercely, breaks too silently, your very existence will be the proof they needed to continue. Because every awakened empath becomes a lighthouse. Not by shining for attention, but by shining because the ocean is dark and someone somewhere will be guided home by that light. So stand now in what you are. You with your 22 silent truths. You with your perception sharp as dreams. You with your heart that feels like thunder wrapped in silk. You rare, ancient, necessary. You were never meant for the ordinary world. You were meant to guide it into a new one. Not loudly, not forcefully, but unmistakably.